Welcome on in, golf fans. It's your boy Gsluke here with our fades and sleepers for this week's Canadian Open. Gonna break down the game theory side of things on Draftkings and give you some of the more over and underhyped players that you should keep an eye on before building some of your PGA DFS lineups tonight. Of course, we'll have our live stream later on. We'll be going through all your questions and whatnot. But what we'll do here is take a look at some of the sleepers, those low-owned, underhyped plays going into lock that I think are worth considering adding to a few of your lineups. And then on the other side of things, we've got the guys overhyped, oversteamed heading into lock, our fades, and I think you might want to consider leaving out of your player pool this weekend. So a lot to get into. Let's go ahead and start this off with a look at some of those overhyped fades. First up for our fades, we've got ourselves Mark Hubbard, and it's not like he hasn't been playing well of late. If we take a look at the recent form, you'll see why he's getting the attention he is. A T30 last time out, a T9 there, 75th, another few made cuts, right, nearly top 25 finishes in both. The guy's been very consistent. He's also been really good with the irons. You take a look at the last 12 measured rounds, gaining close to a stroke per round there, but still struggles off the tee and is not the best putter, right? Not the most consistent putter on the PGA Tour. Does like this surface. You can see it gains close to 2/3 of a stroke per round, but that has him at about 15% ownership, 14.9% in my last run, which is ridiculous. There are players in this range that are sub 3% owned. The real average, I'd say, is closer to the 5 to 6% range. So you're telling me that Mark Hubbard is 2, sometimes 3, 4 times higher, in terms of his chance of succeeding this week than some of his peers? I'd have to say no, right? He's getting steamed up. If you're going to play him, you'd have to take him in 25, 30, maybe even 35% of your lineups to get that leverage. And that is something that, at least for me, is a clear no. Even with the, recent form, even with the sort of shots gained metrics, no one is a for sure thing down here in the 7K range. And the further down in the 7K range you go, we start to get closer to the 6K. You start to get some really sketchy plays. And though Mark Hubbard has made a few cuts of late, it's not like it's beneath him to go out there and miss the cut by 4 or 5 strokes. He's a volatile player to begin with, not the best putter week to week. So unless he returns to this, nearly 2/3 of a stroke per round baseline, or he's gaining there on bent POA, he could have that low week, right? He could go out there, lose that half a stroke per round, and really leave you in a sore situation. You take a look at the last 36 rounds, right? Try and zoom out a little bit. You'll see that he's still losing off the tee, right? Is right around the neutral with the other categories, but a solid iron player. So it's not like he's playing well above his baseline right now. It's just that skill set over the last 2-3 months has not led to that many top finishes, right? Of late, you've seen the real positive end, right? T9, right? I'd say that T18 finish are some of the better starts that he's had the entire year. Maybe that's his ceiling, right? I don't know if he has that top 5, top 10 upside that you're looking for in these large field contests. And like I started, mentioning towards the bat, this is all about those large field tournaments, right? The $5 large GPP, the $20 GPP, going out there, beating 50,000 to 80,000 other entries, and I'm not sure if he's the type of guy to get it done. So if you're in cash, you're in single entries, I like him a lot more in those sort of builds. But when you're in one of these top-heavy contests, I think that's where he starts to lose his luster there a little bit. Pretty much the same price tag. In fact, the same price tag here. We've also got Ben Martin at 13.7%. So another player getting a bunch of steam. This is a lot more because of the ball striking. You take a look at the last 12 measured rounds. It hasn't been amazing, but he's still gaining with the 2 ball striking categories. Over the last 36 rounds, you can see it's a little bit more significant, right? Closer to 1/3 of a stroke per round off the tee, close to half a stroke per round with the approach play. And he's been a factor on this channel for quite some time. But what I worry about are some of the wedges, right? Not the best player from 125 and in. More known for the mid to long irons, which makes sense given that he is relatively long off the tee too. That's why he's able to gain so many strokes off the tee. And at this kind of track that I think is very niche in the fact that it's all about just accuracy off the tee and then those wedges, I don't know if those are really what he's known for. So he's a decent off the tee player, decent ball striker. I typically like playing him at low ownership numbers, a low price tag in most of these kind of fields. But the unfortunate part is that he's $7,300, so you're not really getting that much of a discount here. The price tag has slowly gone up, and then he's nearly 15% owned. I'd say in larger field single entries, higher dollar single entries as well, you're going to see him closer to like 15, 16% owned. And for me, that's just going to keep me out of that, right? Even large field GBPs even, right? Closer to the 13, maybe 14% mark, it's still just too much ownership for me. In fact, There's a player that we're not even going to use as a sleeper pick here. I could have very easily made him one, but it's just a great counterexample. We'll get to a few sleepers here in a second. Would be Nate Lashley, right? We go to the last 12 measured rounds. You have Hubbard up here, right, gaining 0.9 strokes on approach. That's why everyone wants to play him. Well, look at Nate Lashley, right? He's gaining a stroke per round on approach. He's pretty much the same around the green player, and he's a much more consistent putter. In Nate Lashley, I can just tell you, right, I have it blacked out on here, he's close to 5% ownership right now. So if he's the third of the ownership of Hubbard, I think he's a better course fit than Ben Martin and Hubbard too because of his wedge play. Nate Lashley is a solid wedge player, especially from 100 yards and in. I like the fit more there, and I think that he should be the chalky player out of these three players, which is why I wanted to point them out so much as chalk. You've got guys up there in the 9-10K range that are getting a lot more ownership than some of their peers, but I'm hesitant to call those players fades or bad chalk because there's a reason why they're in the 9 and 10K range. There's a reason why they're getting that ownership. Not only are they the best players in the field, but you're also going to spend all of your salary. So for these fades, for my game theory pivots, I like to try and make most of them down here in the 7K range. It's because there's guys like Nate Lashley that are 3 times lower owned than these two players around them. They, at least per my opinion, per my metrics, right, are the same, if not a better play than some of the guys around them. So keep that in mind when you're going through this 7K range. Anyone that's garnering, let's say, more than 10% ownership has to be on high alert for a fade. And in terms of our sleepers, right now we can be a little bit more positive about our plays. We're going to be looking at some of the lower owned diamonds in the rough that you might want to consider. And there's going to be a ton that I play this week, right? So we're just going to point out 2 here for the video, but just know that I'm playing 20, 30 guys that are going to be sub 3% owned. I mean, when I'm playing 150 lineups, I'm going to have a lot of bullets to go out there and act on. So we'll go through 2 of my favorites here, but just know that there's an entire player pool of these sort of players that I have down here in the 7K and below range. It's worth noting, if you want access to that player pool, my projections, the sheets, everything that is blacked out on here, just check out my Patreon page. There's a link down below in the description of the video. On there, it's $10 a month. It gets you access to download these. Of course, you can copy and paste things into your optimizers, including the projections, ownership. You can use the shots gained metrics that I have on here too for all of your own analysis. All of that is included with the subscription, as well as my prop analysis and showdown content throughout the weekend. So make sure to check that out down below. And in terms of our sleeper plays, number 1, we've got Brandt Snedeker. He's $7,000. He's playing in the PM wave, which if you're looking at the weather right now, I don't see a massive difference between the 2 waves. So I'm playing it pretty straight up as of right now, right? A lot can change before a lock. But Brandt Snedeker made his return to golf last week, and it was at a difficult course, difficult field, and he went out there, he made the cut, right? Which doesn't sound like an otherworldly performance, right? And it's far from it, right? T41 out there in that stacked kind of field, but it wasn't a course that fit his game. This track, at least based on my read for it, is nearly a perfect fit for Brandt Snedeker. And let's just go through it, right? Let's dissect it. What is Brandt known for? Like, what are his best attributes? Well, one's his wedge play. He's one of the best wedge players of all time. But furthermore, he's one of the best putters of all time, right? And my number 1 and 2 key stats this week, right, is approach play, but more specifically the wedges, and then number 2, shots gained putting. And on bent POA, he's a killer, right? Gains 0.6 strokes per round. And before he left the tour, his main issue was the flat stick. He was actually hitting the ball pretty well, but for whatever reason, the issue he had going on with his ribs, he claimed it was a bigger problem for his putting, and he was out there losing a bunch of strokes on the greens. So you take a look at these stats. These are from like over a year ago, right? The tee to green stuff, not that bad, right? Losing off the tee, okay, that's kind of his thing, right? This week, you're not even hitting that many drivers, so I think that's really good for him there. But solid with the approach play and around the green play, and losing with the putter. If we can get him on a surface that he loves, at a course where he's going to hit a bunch of wedges, right? I mean, this guy, if he was in any sort of form, right, would probably be in like the mid 7K range. It would be a lot more chalky than 2.9%. So there's a lot of risk here, right? It's his 2nd week back after having a drastic surgery. I don't even really know the full extent of it. All I know is that it was risky. It was something that the doctors didn't want to do to Sneds out there. It had a high level of risk involved with him never being able to play golf again. But for all accounts, it worked. He made his cut his first time back, and now we get him at a perfect track for his game at a low price tag at only 2.9% ownership. So it could go sideways real quickly, but if it goes the right direction, he could finish in the top 15, maybe the top 10, which is kind of what you're looking for at this kind of price tag. And our last sleeper play is real cheap, it's real down the board, and it's Peter Malnati. I'm a sucker for playing Peter the Bucket Hat, right? He's number 151 out of, I believe, at least in my modeling, it was like 153 in the field when it comes to shots gained per round. So if you're looking for any sort of recent form, run the other direction. But Peter Malnati is known for just spiking out of nowhere, right? He's extremely volatile, and just like a Snedeker, he's known for the same two attributes, right? His wedge play, which he's really good from 125 yards and in. It's why he had so much success at Pebble Beach this year. Courses like the Sanderson Farms that you have, Jackson Country Club, another course where you have a lot of wedges in hand. And this week, there'll be a lot of wedges and then a lot of reliance on that putting where he gets most of his work done. You can see he's decent on bent POA, not his best surface. He's much better on just regular bent, I believe, and also just regular POA. So maybe it's a small sample size thing, but he's 0.4% owned. Like literally no one's using Peter Malnati this week. So when I'm using him in GPP lineups, I'm going to take him at 5 to 7%. I'm going to be very aggressive about it and get just unlimited ownership to the ownership leverage to the field, right? We're just going to be well over there. If he goes out there, he banks a top 10 performance while you're looking at essentially only 0.4% of, let's say, 50 to 80,000 entries having him. And especially given how strong my takes are up top, a good chance at actually getting a good combination of players. So these are the kind of plays that can win you a GPP. There are a ton of low-owned players I'm taking down here in the 6K range. It's not just a Peter Malnati, right? There's a lot of players that fit that same kind of description. You can't give away everyone here, but like a Chesson Hadley, right? Good wedge player, really good putter. That's kind of the MO I'm going with. That's what I'm using to take most of my plays down here. But there are, of course, other kind of skill sets I'm getting to as well, right? It's not all about the wedges and the putter, but especially when I'm trying to take guys that I'm maybe taking my biggest stands on, like I am with Malnati, that I'm getting so much leverage to the field on. It's those sort of players in general, though. So slept on, only 0.4% owned, but truth be told, there are a ton of players that you could classify as sleepers in this range that I think are also worthy of playing. Alrighty guys, that is all I've got for the fades and sleepers. I think this is an interesting week, especially on the sleeper side, just given how wide open the field is. Anytime you've got a course that's about the scoring, it's really more about putting than anything, right? Effing putting contest, as Rombo would call it. It really opens up the field for outrights, right? Guys that are in that 100 to 1 range, maybe even longer than that, are actually live to go out there and bink a win for once. So go ahead, let me know your top sleeper down in the comments, right? Just make sure they're $7,500 and cheaper and they're sub, let's say 3% owned, right? We'll put the cap pretty low there. They've got to be a little bit out of right field, but let me know what you're thinking from that end. And until next time, guys, best of luck with those lineups, any outrights that you're going with this week. Smash that like button on the way out of here. We will be doing our live stream tonight at 7 p.m. Eastern time. So if you've got any questions, you want to see what the weather report is, some in the last minute chalk, prop questions, anything there for Underdog or Prize Picks, the time is yours. So make sure to stop on by with those and we'll get ready to go out there and crush it this weekend. Like I said, best of luck and let's get this cash, fellas.